thanks everyone for joining us. I'm sure people will join in the next 5 minutes. Usually it picks up. My name is Nicolle Cannon. I'm a founder and CEO of Cannon Quality Group. We are an outsourced provider of quality management solutions, and we work with startups up to Fortune 500 companies, helping them navigate quality in a more sustainable, approachable, efficient way that works for the organization and the patients. Today, what we're kicking off is our 2022 eQMS series with Jared. Thank you again for being our kickoff. The goal of this series is to create a safe environment space so that people can learn a little bit more about eQMS, not feel like they have to be sold, and then from this figure out if they want to explore deeper into each one. Jared's going to walk us through Enzyme today and some of the new features, which I'm pretty excited to learn. And again, you guys, we will have a chat and we will have polls to help get a sense of who's in the room and help Jared direct his content toward you. So feel free, this is safe. I'll be the only one looking at the chat and putting the questions out. I'll be interrupting Jared at the most inefficient manner. No, I'm kidding. And helping get you guys the questions answered that you need. On that note, we will get rolling. I'm not doing a great job of my slides. And give it over to Jared to talk about Enzyme.
All right, thanks, Nicolle. Hi, everybody. Nice to be speaking with you again, especially for those who might have joined us last year, roughly about this time. My name is Jared Seehafer. I'm the CEO and co-founder of Enzyme, and we're here to talk today about our eQMS system. We'll do a little bit of a demo, but broadly, like our thoughts on eQMS writ large. When is it a good choice for a company? When is it not? When are the sort of inflection points in your sort of company or project sort of life cycle that makes it a wise choice to do? And what are the things that you should look out for? And we'll give all of that advice. Obviously, I'm here. I can't resist giving a little bit of a sales pitch, but most of the content is going to be vendor agnostic. So these are things that you will apply, I think, if you choose us, or they'll apply if you choose any of our peer competitors as well. So we hope you get something out of this that's more than just like, hey, go buy Enzyme, though. I hope you go buy Enzyme.
But it's a key point, like you bring up. I mean, at the end of the day, it's really about the fit, right? And knowing how to navigate. So it's really key to all these points to making. It's a big decision.
Yeah, and we tell people all the time, and we actually routinely will kind of send people away, especially if they're younger in their evolution, and like maybe come back and say, not probably the best fit right now. Maybe come back in 6 months. Come back when you get further along in development, you're closer to a design freeze, et cetera, et cetera. Or and we're going to talk about this later on. Maybe encouraging a stepwise approach to eQMS, where you're just starting off with electronic document management, e-signatures, training. And you step up to more of kind of the more complicated modules and workflows as your process and your company evolves. Really, what we really don't want is, and because it doesn't help anybody, for you to buy a system that you're just not going to use.
Right. Yeah. It's not a step function. I like that. Yeah. Like it's not just
Yeah, we don't want to sell expensive paperweights, basically. It might be good. It might make my board happy, but that's about it. And at the end of the day, it's not going to be good for anybody.
Yeah, it's got to be usable.
So just really briefly about the company, we are going on 5 years old, 5 years plus now. We were founded in 2017. My co-founder and I are been around med device many years. Pretty much most of the principles in the company have been the same. And we really founded it out of a frustration with the available tooling on the market. We think, especially for the smaller kind of like the startup and SMB market, but also for enterprises as well. Like, we had thought that even working at places like Medtronic and Boston and Stryker and Abbott, and had seen all of the sort of enterprise level systems, not really being happy with any of those, and then like the sheer lack of a lot of things for startups, especially the things that are kind of priced appropriately for where a startup needs to be spending their money.
Yeah, 100%.
And so we we set out to, we thought we maybe could do a better job, and so we set out to have done that, and we're still kicking along 5 years later now, working with over 80 different companies of a range of sizes. Like Canon, we work with everything from 3 or 4 person university spin out type of situation, all the way up to divisions and business units within Fortune 500 med device and biopharma. And so the product, we think we demonstrated scales equally well from something that's really, really small and something that is gigantic. And one of the ways it does this is one of the things we're going to be talking about later today for those of you who are interested in new features. And I think I'll go ahead and move on from there. So we're going to be, talking, as I said today, about, eQMS in general, why Enzyme might be the best for you. We'll do a kind of a brief demo for those of you who, maybe not have seen the product before, haven't seen it in a while. Particularly kind of highlight some of the things that have changed for those of you who've been following us, over the months and years. We had a pretty significant major release that just went out that's going to, I think, enable a lot of flexibility in a way we think kind of is the best fit on the market right now for that kind of thing. And I'll talk about that in a bit. And we'll kind of address some of the things that are on the roadmap for 2022. We are growing and hiring, and I think like pretty much everyone else in business, Nicolle included, our rate limiting agent right now is people. So we're moving fast, and then of course time for your questions as well.
I'm gonna drop the first poll while you swap over, which is where do you place yourself on the digital maturity scale? If you guys can answer it, helps Jared know again who's in the room and how to cater the questions or the demos.
So a little bit about why we think our product, why do you think our product might be right for you, and like what do we try to do with it? Like what's informing the design philosophy? And there were really 3 things that we sought out to do from day one in development of Enzyme. The first one is that we were really frustrated by systems that were everything were disconnected, right? So you might be working at a big company and you might have complaints and TrackWise, and you might have requirements and doors, and you might have NCs and master control, and you might have a document management system that's like based off of Salesforce that the company wrote, or not Salesforce, based off of SharePoint that the company wrote like 20 years ago, and no one knows really how it works. It's really buggy, and none of these systems talk to each other. And the startup version of that there's a startup version of that as well. And it looks something like this. You store your documentation in, let's say Google Drive or Dropbox or Box or OneDrive, and you get e-signatures in DocuSign because it's Part 11 compliant, and you've got like your training matrix is in a Google Sheet somewhere, and it's somebody's job to round everyone up to make sure they read new procedures, and the training matrix is always out of date, and you're always really, really worried when you come down to audit time. And Nicole's
You're gonna send me to therapy, Jared.
Yeah, Nicole's team comes and does an internal audit and says, "Oh my God, you're going to completely fail. You're stage 2." There's a version of that too. This is effectively the same type of problem, which is you have a bunch of different quality processes that need to all work together, and the systems don't talk to each other. And so we set out to build a system that had kind of everything you needed out of the gate, but moreover, that would connect to other tools that you might be using as part of your business process. So one of the things that I think really distinguishes our platform relative to the competition is the depth of integrations and the API and generally the import-export functionality out of the product. Which allows us not only to integrate with common tools like, say, Salesforce or Zendesk for customer feedback and complaints, or Slack for notifications, or the G Suite for file storage and Google Docs and Google Sheets, or if you're making software, GitHub for code storage, or if you're using Jira either for software or for just even project management. These are all examples of integrations that we've got built in. We also have the ability to have custom integrations, and that can be really valuable if you've got some kind of more esoteric system that you're using and is kind of baked into the cake. Our view of eQMS is that it really should just be part of your sort of tech stack. It should be just part of one of many tools. It is the system of record, and it is one of the most important. But in order to allow you to effectively take credit for all the work you're doing already, that's part of your quality processes, without having to sort of copy and paste or import and export, without having to have this sort of syncing problem that invariably means you're going to be out of date. We wanted to build that functionality into the app, and that was one of our principles. The second is that the product is really designed for the non-expert. And what I mean by that is that, one, like from a design perspective, we hope it's easy to follow, but also that we've sort of made it so that things are hopefully logically follow, you know where to put stuff in. Really what we were trying to do was address a common problem that we saw in especially small, like startups and like, kind of the emerging company. The ones kind of taking off, you've got your product launched, you raise some money, you're scaling out commercial teams, boom, 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 boom. You've got all of these new data, the QMS responsibilities just got ratcheted up because now you are going to get audited, and you're probably going to have, your MD SAP every year and all the rest of it. And what we saw is the poor quality team became this bottleneck because no one wanted to use the eQMS. And so the quality team becomes effectively the pushers and surrogate controls, routing people, and everyone just said like, hey, can you put this in the system because I don't really know how to use it or want to learn how to use it. And so one of the things that we did is try to make it easy for every person and every function of the company to log in and do what they need to do. And that's one of the things we measure in terms of our KPIs is, how frequently, are people in different roles logging into the system. We expect the quality and regulatory teams to be in the system all the time, and they are. It's something like 98% of people without function are daily active users. But even, we measure, how is R&D? How's top management? We're actually really happy when we see, someone with a kind of a top management role who's a weekly active user. The CEO is logging in to sign things in the system. That's good. It means the CEO doesn't have to be hunted down to do that. So that's the second principle. We really built it for the non-expert. And then the third principle gets to, we wanted to build something that started out lean, but could scale with you. And our theory here is we like the idea of intelligent defaults that you can override. And, we've had some customization in the past. We've got a heck of a lot more of it now. It's one of the things I'm going to show you. It's probably the biggest thing that's new in the last few months if you've been following Enzyme, is the ability to effectively customize your record structure and, kind of form structure to your heart's content, more or less. So if you're coming to the gate with an existing, quality system, especially, this can be a big help in terms of mapping over and keeping your sort of same kind of data structure going forward. Okay, just getting back to the poll, looks like we've got kind of a good mix of people here. Some folks on the manual side. I'm kind of curious, Nicolle, how would you distinguish between digital and connected and intelligent? I get the manual.
Yeah. Digital to me is something like Box or Google. Maybe they have some digital aspect.
The manual is literally a file cabinet. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And then intelligence going to be like there's actually some kind of logic or algorithm or links happening, right? Not just a digital version of the manual. And connected would be cross-connected platforms or things pulling data from other platforms. I'm going to take this to drop the other one is to see where people are on their product life cycle. If you guys can answer that one, and then we have one more for you guys later.
Excellent. Okay. So some of the features I'll just kind of hop to and before we get into the app itself. Of course, the product is Part 11 compliant. It's kind of table stakes here. We are additionally SOC 2 Type 2, and we run the company under an ISO 9001 quality system that's certified by DECRA. So, we think it's kind of table stakes that a QMS software company should follow all the relevant compliance, and we definitely do that. And of course, this flexible role-based permissions model that's going to be, I think, probably common to what you're seeing in system-wide search and record linkage and traceability. One of the things that I think is distinctive about our system is that there's an optional package of procedures that we have written that are kind of intended for use with the system. So if you're needing something along those lines and you don't have someone like Nicolle's team to write them for you, that's an option for you. The last bit here on kind of the bold is that there's been this there's basically kind of in the marketplace a lot of tools that are kind of based off of Salesforce. Viva is a tool like that, and where you can, it's structured in a certain way, but you can basically kind of like change everything if you've got a PhD in Salesforce to your heart's content. And it's a little bit like
they have those now, right? PhDs.
Yeah. Well, there is actually like a whole, you can go to Salesforce and there's like a whole educational
university
structure. Yeah, they do have that. You can get certified at different levels of Salesforce. So it's that's not much hyperbole.
Yeah.
And then there's the flip side. There are the systems that are more kind of custom designed. Things like Green Light Guru, Mass Control, Qualio. These are all tools that they're like, it's not based on any other platform. It's something that they wrote themselves. Enzyme falls into that category as well. And one of the downsides there is it's a lot harder to change sort of the data structure and the workflows from kind of what's built in. The logic is kind of guides you down a certain way. And some of the tools have some flexibility around custom fields, and some of them don't. There's varying levels of customization. We think we've struck a good balance between those two, where you're able to have a data structure that is customizable, but you don't need a PhD to customize it in the tool. Our product, cloud-based, which I think most of them on the market are these days in some form or another. It's on the Amazon Web Services system. Depending on where your locations are, we're going to deploy them either to, we're going to deploy them somewhere near to where you are, whether that's somewhere in the United States or internationally. But we rely on AWS for our architecture because of its basically size and stability. It governs and powers a lot of the internet, and it allows you a lot of data integrity and protection. So data gets replicated and duplicated across data centers, but in a secure way. And that's backed up by the fact that our architecture isolates all customer data from all other customer data. So there's no sort of one master farm of servers in the cloud that's hosting you and 20 of your peer competitors. There's just you, and everyone is isolated from everyone else. And of course, all the data is encrypted in rest and in transit.
And that's one of those passive nuggets of when you're evaluating these systems, a really good nuance to see if they have that, if they're isolating the architecture for tenants, separately, or if you're all in a big farm.
Exactly, and it's one of the things that actually, if you don't have either a single tenant architecture or a platform that you're kind of writing off of like force.com, it's one of the things that actually makes it difficult to customize everything, because you would have to customize. If you wanted your complaint form to look like this, it would be much harder not to make everyone else's complaint form look like that.
Right.
Whereas in this architecture, it makes it much easier to say, like, well, no, company A's structure is going to be different than company B's structure, and they have no relationship with each other whatsoever. Okay, getting back to the poll here, looks like we've got some folks pretty early on. We're going to talk about between concept and feasibility, I think is the right time to start thinking about eQMS. We're going to talk about that here after the demo, I think. And then some folks in V&V, and no one is submitted and waiting. I guess that's a good thing, in as much as if you submitted and waiting, you haven't got your QMS figured out, that would be bad.
Yeah, and I'm gonna, I'm looking at who's in, and I'm just gonna, and I realize we should probably add an answer for futures commercial because we do have some commercial uh, individuals here, so that's just a good thing to know. Add that to the poll for future.
One of the things that we think is really important with eQMS is, well, okay, so you bought this nice shiny tool, then what?
Mm-hmm.
And so we pride ourselves on having a really thorough yet really quick onboarding process where we're aiming really to get everybody onboarded on the system, migrated data where it's necessary in 30 days or less, and really getting people off the races on the admin side within 2 weeks of contract initiation. So
Nice.
it helps nobody to, for you to be sort of 6 months in and, still not really onboarded into the system. More often than not, that leads to kind of failure to launch. And so we're really trying to okay, let's get off the races here. And
is there a certain amount of setup that, given that, depending on what size organization or where the company is coming, is there a certain amount of things it's best that they have this ready before we start the launch in order to make it most successful?
It's a great question. I think the answer is different depending on the size of the organization. As the organization gets larger, probably the single most important ingredient to successful implementation of eQMS is the necessary top cover and executive buy-in for the approach, because where one of the things that is kind of a failure mode of this is when you've got the core team, the quality team bought in, using it, that's great. Can't get anyone else to go to training, can't get anyone else to sign in, and it's kind of stuck in this sort of isolated silo because everyone else is saying, like, I only have so many hours in the day. We've got these really aggressive timelines.
Right.
I'm spending every minute I've got on what I've been told by my management are my top priorities. And I would really like to help you on the eQMS thing, but I literally don't have the time for that.
Yeah. Yeah, you really have to plan infrastructure wise that it's gonna,
There's more, and like I said, that gets more important as you get larger. When you're sort of a smaller company, I think this is probably true regardless. Before and we get kickoff, kind of coming to the table with, okay, here's going to be the point person and the liaisons kind of own the account. Here are the kind of key people that you need to make sure get kind of, here are people that are more important to onboard and train than others because they'll carry their teams along, and if you can get them on, train quickly, we'll be fine. So kind of that kind of political dynamic aspect of the organization. And then lastly, what data do you want to bring over, and in what architecture, and where is it? As opposed to, oh wait, we need to figure out where the data is. Okay, and then we lose 2 weeks, and then it's you added 2 weeks to the schedule of, and we wanted to, instead of getting done in 30 days, we're done in a month and a half. Kind of coming to the table with those 3 ingredients, I think is we really set everyone up for success.
Okay, good.
Speaking of that idea of training, so we do have multiple levels of training on offer for different levels of user in the company. So everything from of course, like an admin, generally the quality personnel are going to be getting that, of course, but other people can get it as well. There's like a power user level where there's going to be a lot of access and use of the system, but not the level of admin. And then there's sort of the general user who's probably just kind of logging in to maybe comment, maybe read some stuff. Usually everyone's going to be training, so learn how to train, but that's like kind of like the lowest tier. And we can mix and match these, and we've got courses that are available, but then also there's live training that we can do for each one of these levels. And we figure out that out during kickoff. Lastly, I'll say in terms of support, especially if you're a large organization, if you're looking for like, hey, we want somebody who's going to be dedicated support person for our company, that's an option. Generally not needed unless you're 500 plus organization, but I just put that out there in case you are. And in terms of getting access to us, we get a common question of, okay, hey, what happens after we onboard? And do you go away? And do I have to come back and pay you an extra, $199 a month so I can talk to you again?
Right.
Embedded in our license fees, we have our standard support, where you're going to be getting access to us via in-app chat and via our support email box, and that is monitored pretty much 7 days a week from. I have to look up the SLA, but it's basically a large portion of the day, and we've got overnight support as well. So
nice.
we are here for you in the rare event that you need something and you need it soon. All right, like I said at the outset, this is very briefly. Looks like that got systems. Yeah, that's a little bit of a rendering problem. The application is, I think, distinct in being able to connect to a bunch of different systems, and so you can integrate it with your existing tool chain, and you can also, like I said at the outset, kind of deploy it sort of stepwise. So starting out with, say, doc control, and then moving up, maybe you have design control, and then there you have suppliers, and then you go to market, and then you're going to have Kappa. That is a common deployment pattern. And lastly, before we get to the demo, some hints and teasers for where we're coming in 2022. So new modules. There's going to be eTMF, bill of operations and materials, or BOOM in our parlance, test case management. On the platform side, we're going to add to and make our API a little bit more robust. Dedicated mobile app, and then Zapier. For those of you who don't know Zapier is this kind of middleware that you can connect your app to pretty much everything that Zapier connects to, and we view this as kind of a shortcut. So for anyone that's got a system that maybe we don't have a direct integration to, you can easily, in this very nice kind of easy UI, no code UI, blocks, drag and drop here.
Yes, non-PhD needed.
Yeah,
really
Luddite friendly UI. You're able
to
you're able to connect two systems together in such a way, and we don't have to have any part of it. Like you do it yourself.
Yeah, it's a great tool.
We're also making enhancements to core parts of the platform that exist already, but we're adding more to them. Notifications, particularly controlling where notifications go to, and kind of like a workflow around them for cases like maybe someone's out, maybe someone needs a delegate. If there's something time pressing and you can't get a hold of whoever the person is. Metrics, we do have metrics built in, but adding more functionality, more types of commands and queries you can run. And then on the import and export side, giving you control. There is import and export capability. Export capability renders out to pretty standard structures, so standard kind of Excel structure, standard kind of like PDF, giving you the capability to actually customize what that looks like. So you can kind of render out to whatever you want it to look like in the app. And all of that's going to be coming this year.
Nice.
Okay.
I'm going to drop the last poll because you're going to go into demo now.
Mm-hmm.
So everybody, what's your priority in the eQMS solution? Always helps us make sure he points to those in the demo. I was telling Jared before we started that my dog's here and she may start snoring. She hasn't yet, and she must be riveted by what's happening up here.
Okay, good.
And as a reminder, everybody, I'm on the chat, so if you have questions, I'll drop them. I'll interrupt Jared just like I've been doing, and I'll ask him questions.
Sure. So I'm gonna walk through just the core functionality of the app. This is only going to be a very high level 10 or so minute demo, so we can get to talking about some of these more kind of vendor agnostic questions. Of course, anyone on this call, I believe our contact information is going to go out after the webinar, so feel free. We're happy to get you a more thorough demo and evaluation, including a sandbox evaluation of the platform if you are interested. So the Enzyme system, for those of you who are familiar with eQMS, hopefully comes across as pretty straightforward in its architecture. It's a series of modules that are corresponding to different quality processes, all kind of linked together under a hood with common platform capabilities like permissions, access, signatures, data import, export, integrations, etc. And those modules are all accessible here from the main menu. So we're looking right now at the dashboard, which is one of our modules, which is collecting and sourcing data with calls to action for things you've got to do, things the company has to do if you've got that permission set up. Same thing for training, same thing for signature requests, notifications for things that you either routed or need to be at your attention, all sort of at a glance as you log in. So if you're not going to any one specific record, this is where you're going to sign up first. And the modules up here, we group them in these three classifications. There's product, process, and improvement. Product is going to design control and risk management. So design control and risk management, and you're actually looking here at us dog fooding our product. It's a software term of art for making sure you use it. We build Enzyme. We build Enzyme on Enzyme. So you can see our actual design history file here with the various user needs requirements and V&V that has done to ensure that it's properly verified and validated. The design control module provides you with features like traceability across your sort of stages of design. Also allows you to structure and look at and work with your design at a granular level. So instead of sort of say routing a user needs document or requirements document in Enzyme, you actually route user needs and requirements individually, and that allows you to do a lot of useful things, traceability being one of them, linking to outside systems being another, and being able to rewind the clock and see exactly what the state of the system was at a point in time, another feature of structuring it this way. Design really tied to risk. Now we manage risk differently, so this is why that's empty. So I will flip to one of our demo servers here. So you can see a risk management structure. So risk management designed to implement a 14971 compliant hazard analysis here, implementing your risk table, linking back to elements in design control for demonstration of traceability and risk control implementation.
Is that editable by product, or is it set? Is set by the overall structure, like an SOP would drive the certain controls in your risk?
It is each of those, Nicolle, is independent of each other on a product scope. So the former is the answer to your question. Editable by product. Awesome. Yeah. On the document control side, document control I hope is straightforward. Folder structure. Where you can have as many folders, subfolders, etc. Each document is going to have different metadata associated with it, things like document type, categorized documents, numbering. System's going to do automatic numbering. System will do automatic PDF generation, automatic stamping of headers and footers, automatic red lines, and the DemIO is crashing my web browser. Hang on one second. One moment. Sorry, the UI froze and the web browser's freezing. Fun.
Let me go back to my poll and see what we have while you're doing that from priority. It looks like most people's priority is collaboration, so that's a good nuance.
There we go. Okay.
All right.
So the automatic PDF generation, automatic redline generation in the system. So hopefully all straightforward. Document control really tied to training. So training allows you to obviously manage your training on either documents or what we call tasks. So tasks are any arbitrary training that you want to set up. Documents, of course, any document can be trained to, any version of any document can be trained to. And these get managed mostly by these curricula, which are going to map roles in the system to documents or tasks or both in the system, and then set rules for when does this training repeat, defaulting to anytime like the relevant document is going to be revved up. And built-in quiz functionality for testing for acceptance. All of the Enzyme routing of content and records and documents in the system gets funneled here through the approvals module, which is going to give you access to, depending on your permission level, either just the stuff that's going to be relevant to you, or all the way up to seeing everything that has come through the system. Obviously, that gets really big, so there's all these filters up here for structuring that. And that allows you kind of a link to the content directly from the approvals module. Also, you can get access to sort of change request data from each of the pieces of content in and of themselves. So two-way gets you to the same place. Under process, we have a supplier module. Supplier module is going to cover, routing your approved supplier, your approved supplier list, and maintaining your supplier files, putting your suppliers through workflows, setting them up, maybe starting out conditional approval, maybe approving them over time, going through an audit cycle, all in workflows that are structured for that purpose. And as we move to improvement, this is getting more toward the post-market things. So for instance, audits for managing your internal and external supplier audits, complaints for managing your complaint, your complaint records and life cycle, and maybe sending those out for initial approval and then getting more data and updating them, and maybe you have to go through an investigation, and maybe you have to go through reportability analysis, then finally closing the complaint. Lastly, non-conformances for filing product and process non-conformances. You can do resolutions in the body of the non-conformance, link it back to change records, or decide to escalate that non-conformance to a CAPA if you see multiple instances of that. And then finally, our CAPA module, which I will just say, I hope makes CAPA as painless as possible, because we tried to design it as such. Basically, set up your CAPA team, set up an investigation plan, define elements, assign people, and then you go through the various phases where you're filling out the CAPA record and moving on from phase to phase to phase to phase, with the capability of setting an extension request, having a workflow for that if you need it. So you've got the proper recording of sort of the whole CAPA lifecycle. Okay, so all of this that I just showed you in terms of how this is structured, and we've heard about this a lot with respect to complaints, is like, hey, okay, this looks great. Can I change this stuff? And before there were sort of limited circumstances that you could, and now in our latest release, we are opening that up. So just by way of example, like here is an alternative complaint form with a completely different structure relative to our standard one that is being used by one of our clients right now. But you can basically mix and match and restructure different fields, different types of data. So we're starting out with sort of record content right now that is going live. We are going to be moving on to workflows, more customized workflows with different multi-stage within the next couple of quarters. So those will be launching in the first half of this year. But the record editing, right now, the way that's structured is it's just a support ticket. Hey, I want the record structure to look like this versus that. And we will get that processed within a couple of days at the most. We are eventually going to build in this workflow into the app itself. As you might imagine, there's a lot of usability. There's a lot of usability challenges in doing that properly and not turning it into another sort of, you got to have a PhD in the system type of setup. So we are heavily working on that, and in fact, Nicolle, I might be reaching out to your team for some feedback to make sure we're nailing that.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay. I think we've got about 20-ish minutes left. I'd like to spend the rest of the time talking about just general considerations and then also questions if we have them.
Okay, sounds great. Do you need me to are you putting the slides back up, or do you need to do it?
Oh, if you could do so, please. Yeah, I don't have them ready.
Yeah.
Great. Thank you. Okay, so we wanted to talk a little bit about different stages and kind of general questions around eQMS. So the first is we often get a lot of questions, both we do, I know Nicolle's team does, is like, when do we do this eQMS thing? Do we do it from the jump? Do we do it from maybe down the line? When? And our theory is it really behooves you, unless you're running on shoestring, which I get it. Like if you got like a stage, phase 1 SBIR, and that's the only money the company has. All right, you might have to deal with sort of a box DocuSign solution for a while. But if there's any sort of flexibility in the budget, our view is doc control and electronic training that are tied together are advisable from day one. Saves a lot of time on the back end. And our view is that the question about when to release other modules, like do you need a design control module? Do you need a specific complaints module? You do it as it makes sense. You do it at the point that like, is it kind of burdensome to have to hunt through documents to constantly keep finding your data? It will be really quickly, but it might not be in the very early stages. And we've got companies even that are really mature, particularly if there's been kind of a digital migration. We see this with some CMs, for instance, where they've been manufacturing class 2 medical devices for like 40 years, and they've been doing pretty much the same business. And until recently, it was literally a file cabinet. We had a number of these during COVID. Is that everyone went to one building, and they were doing that. That was the business. And there's the doc control room, and that's been that way for a long, long time. And suddenly they couldn't do that anymore. And now what? And we've had clients like that. They just want doc control and training, and that's all they want. Like that's the level to which they're going to implement digital. I think that's perfectly fine. So that is a sort of an option with you for Enzyme. The system certainly works at that scale if that's what that's the limit of what you want to roll out. Obviously, we think there's value in some of the higher order stuff, but not necessary.
And it's a good one early on just to pipe in, like you were mentioning, if you have budget, just from a business side, it's not around a have to or regulations. That's what we get all the time. Like, when do I have to? I always think like doc control and training, it's just good hygiene. Again, it's not a have to. You guys know me, like there's nothing that's black and white. But the sooner you do it, the less time and money you spend on personnel or somebody sitting there who's the oracle, who knows where everything is, right? In that room with all those documents, or even in an electronic filing structure, sorting through Dropbox, there's one person who knows how to find all those things. So the sooner you can get doc control and training and just that foundational hygiene of the organization, it makes so much sense.
Definitely, 100% agreed. On the platforms, how does one evaluate? We think there's sort of general trade-offs that you're going to see no matter who you talk to. One's going to be there's sort of ease of use versus customizability aspect. The other one is going to be like, and things that are going to be easier to use are necessarily going to be less customizable, because one of the things that makes them easy to use are specific design decisions that were made. The more you kind of open it up, the more you necessarily have to build complexity into the system. The other trade-off is the need to integrate versus having all data entry in the system. So do you rely very heavily on some of these other tools for your process, or is everything kind of getting entered directly into the system, and that's the place where it lives, and it always lives? And then the third being is something that's purpose-built or something that's more generic. And as sort of eQMS has grown as a category, this is becoming, I think, less of a trade-off that one has to consider. But for some people that are like saying, maybe using a kind of like a general purpose tool or something that's not really designed for QMS, like if you're going to use PLM system that has like a QMS bolt-on, no offense to people who make those PLM systems, a lot of them are very good, but companies tend to focus on like whatever the core competency is. And generally, I think fair to say that the PLM functionality is going to be more sophisticated than like the stuff that comes, the QMS functionality.
All right, I have a question for you before we
yes.
go, and that's back to the last point around last slide, was how does cost scale as modules are activated? So we're talking about starting with doc control and training.
So we basically have a 2x2 matrix in terms of our cost structure. One is going to be sort of levels of numbers of users. The other one is going to be levels of use of modules. We have 3 packages for our modules. We have a core system, which is that aforementioned doc control, training, and then approvals. We then have a pre-market, which adds on to the core system, the design, risk, and suppliers. And then we have a full system, which is the entire full shebang. And generally, they're within about each one. We'll get you a formal quote if you're interested, but basically each one is going to be within about 20% of the other in terms of cost structure. So you add 20% if you're going from point A to point B, and then if you're going to point B to point C, it's another 20% roughly. So yeah, happy to, if you're interested, please get a hold of us, and we'll be happy to get you a pricing matrix and a formal quote for each setup.
Okay. Thanks.
Other platform evaluation considerations, do you need an all-in-one solution? Are you going to, or do you have systems that you're using for one process that are already kind of baked into the cake and you're not going to change? How's data getting in and out? Are there any sort of?
I feel like that's a huge thing to consider, is that those other systems, especially one of the biggest benefits of Enzyme, I think. Not one of the biggest, but one of the biggest differentiators, I should say.
Yeah. Yeah, we don't. We philosophically, we think the idea that like we're going to like lock you in is repugnant. It's like it's your data, it's not ours.
Right.
The last is this is going to be counter to the thing I was saying before on the generic versus the purpose built. Maybe you are going to be rolling out PLM with eQMS. Maybe it behooves you in that case to like just have one system. I think that's a definitely, there are definitely cases in which that might work. So
it gets back down to size and future and goals of the
What are you trying to do with it? Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Okay, so into successful implementation. I mentioned this before. Getting executive buy-in, getting cross-functional buy-in. It doesn't matter if quality is really bought in. If engineering is saying no, and I'm not going to ask my people to spend any time in eQMS, it's just going to be a nightmare. Having the data ready. Understanding how the eQMS rollout is going to interface with anything that needs to change to the QMS writ large. So especially if you have an existing QMS, like what's going to need to change about your procedures, if anything. Do you need specific work instructions for how to use the eQMS? What's that going to look like? Having the team available for training. And then lastly is, tell whoever your provider is what your will prompt you. But like it's always better if you kind of come to us and say like, I need to do this, and this. Because that's what we're here to do. Like your success is our success. And if you kind of come to it saying like, these are the challenges I'm going to face, I need you to help me kind of achieve and overcome them, much more likely to be a smooth process. Okay, and I think we left about 10 minutes for questions. So are there any more questions from the group?
Not coming in hot just yet. I know one question people always ask that I'm not seeing just yet is the validation aspects and what you do when you do rollouts. So maybe you want to touch on that while we wait for other questions to come.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, this is another place where we think we've got a pretty strong differentiation. We execute validation on the product ourselves, basically. So we have a giant list of user needs, and we go with a fine-tooth comb throughout every aspect of the product, testing the boundary conditions, and release this free to our customers to access at any time. Generally, what we have found is that sort of the review and sort of approval as appropriate for whatever your kind of procedures are around this thing is sufficient for most companies. We have only ever seen that validation be not used in larger organizations that have dedicated software, like third-party software validation teams, where it's like they're just saying like, well, we're going to do this ourselves.
That's their job.
Right. Exactly. But I know that validation report has been reviewed in multiple audits at this point, and we've never heard any trouble from it. Yeah. And if you look at it, it's extensive. it's a fair amount of work. Yeah.
One question off of that, and I'm gonna try this answer live thing, so you should be able to see it. Is how's the version control of the system handled, including validations if necessary?
Are you saying version control as in new releases? Or what do you mean with version control?
I think so. Let me, we'll see if the questioner pipes up about that. I think one aspect before he pipes up is, I know some people want to have control of when the releases are going to come out, right? Are they going to just be done to me, or do I get a say so that I'm ready?
Yeah. So let's assume this is what the questioner is answering, and I'll do both of those questions at the same time.
And it was a yes. You just said yes.
Good. So Enzyme, like a lot of software products, has a major minor patch type of structure. Major is in our software lifecycle is signifying of effectively major revalidation is going like the way we distinguish between major and minor really gets down to revalidation. So a major release is going to be like, this is going to be a huge revalidation exercise for pretty much everybody. A minor release is effectively either minor revalidation because we're improving something, or minor supplemental validation because we're adding something. Patches to return to specification. Patches or a cybersecurity fix, which there are legion, because cybersecurity is you always have to be working on it. So cybersecurity is cybersecurity or a patch release. Those are going to get pushed on you. You don't have a choice because it's really about returning the product to spec, or a security considered. So there's no choice about that. Major or minor releases. Basically, major releases we do a lot of comms upfront, a lot of so there's ample notice. Minor releases generally will come automatically, but I'll caveat that by saying if this is something that is very, very important to you, we can deploy because of our structure and architecture in such a way that you have control over when something gets deployed. Except for the patches. That's the one exception there. Now there's going to be a additional cost associated with that because it increases our logistical overhead, making sure that we're keeping multiple branches of the software up to date. But it is possible. So if this is something that you're concerned about, we're happy to discuss options in the sales process.
Okay, and here's a follow-up question on that, which is about the custom options or changes to modules. Oops. It went away. How's the validation handled if customers have custom options or changes to modules as far as implementation?
Yeah, great question. So we distinguish between configuration and customization. What I was showing you about the complaints module and also alluding to with the the other record types, etc. Those are basically runtime configuration changes. We have validated the boundary conditions of those, meaning that we have tested the different associations and different combinations possible prior to release. We distinguish that from customization of the code. Like if there's something that we are building in specifically for you, let's say, for instance, you have a legacy system, doesn't talk with the normal APIs. I bring this up because we worked with Nicole's team at this client to implement this legacy system, so it's very fresh in my mind to implement this hook. In that case, where we're going to be building in something and it's like really just for you, there is going to be a really kind of a collaborative validation where we will work with you in order to make sure that that is properly validated and then stays up to date in terms of its validation on a go-forward basis. But in terms of the sort of standard capabilities of the system and all of the various permutations, like we aim for a validation that covers all bases, and that includes the integrations as well. So we also, if you look at our JIRA validation report, it's like 50 pages long because we've tried every way possible to structure the webhook, looking for all the edge cases that we could.
Nice. I'm gonna move to close out and get this last question up because I think it's a good one to end on for you as a reminder for everybody is what makes Enzyme different than the competition and what are the competitive advantages of Enzyme? Yeah,
great way to close. Okay, so there are a few things here I will end on. The first is that we aim to have a system that is, as I said at the outset, easy for everyone in the company to use, that starts out with guardrails, but is scalable and adjustable as your process gets more complex. And I think we with our latest release have really hit that on the mark more than any of our competitors, frankly. Being able for something that you can kind of get it out of the box and you're not going to make any mistakes, but as your process evolves and you want to be more custom, you're able to easily change that going forward. Lastly, I would say I think it's the most integratable product on the market, and is going, if you are using anything else or think you ever might need to use anything else in the development of your product, you're going to give you the easiest time of doing that, and the solution that's going to offer you the least headaches in terms of keeping data up to date or in sync or making sure your eQMS is actually reflective of reality and what you're doing.
Yeah, I think it's a great solution in that regard. And thank you again, Jared, and thank everybody for coming. If you need to get a hold of us, Jared, do you have, where is your
I don't know where it's,
yeah,
it's jared@enzyme.com, or just remember enzyme.com, you'll find us there.
Yeah, and you can always reach us at Quality Canon. I will direct you guys over to. We've had that sometimes just out of this. Sometimes it's hard to remember to get all that info. A couple of things that we're offering for everybody is we have device compliance essentials, which is key for startups. Very early commercial. It's a set of procedures plus coaching. I found a lot of people kind of like Jared when people buy these eQMS, same with SOPs, or they can't get this out of the box solution and think they can use it. So usually they shelve them. What we're trying to do is put a solution in where we coach them and help them. And then also, if you want to see our eQMS graphic, we've put a graphic out there where we've compared a bunch of the different eQMSs that people are using, enzymes in there, and you can get that free on the website. Thank you, everybody. It's been great. Good to see you also, Jared, and Happy New Year to everybody.
Thank you all.